Imagine a world where no one ever built a home. No cities, no villages, no brick houses, no concrete towers, no suburban streets. From the dawn of time, humanity never stopped moving, not once. There were no farms to tie people down, no architecture to anchor society. Every family, every tribe, every civilization, forever in motion. Now think about what that really means. No nation-states with capital cities. No skyscrapers or power grids. No ancient ruins or architectural wonders, because nothing was ever meant to last. Just endless movement, generation after generation. A planet of wanderers, where stillness is unnatural and permanence is a myth. This isn't a post-apocalyptic world or a futuristic fantasy. This is a complete rewrite of human history, a civilization that never settled. So if the idea of home never existed, what kind of world would we have built instead? In our reality, the invention of permanent dwellings changed everything. Once humans stopped wandering and started building homes, it opened the door to agriculture, cities, politics, empires, even modern civilization itself. Staying in one place allowed people to grow food, store it, protect it, and pass knowledge down through generations. The idea of settling down became a cornerstone of what we call progress. But what if that never happened? What if the first humans never chose to stay put? What if there were no early villages, no first farms, no reason to stay in one place? What if, for tens of thousands of years, the human race continued as it began, walking, migrating, living lightly on the land, refusing to build anything meant to stand still? In this alternate history, the concept of a permanent structure never takes root. Instead, every tool, every shelter, every part of daily life evolves around constant motion. The very idea of property, territory, and stability transforms or vanishes entirely. Human civilization doesn't vanish, it just grows differently. And now, we'll follow that parallel path to explore what happens when the foundation of human progress is mobility, not permanence. But it all begins with one critical divergence. No farms, no cities, just humans who keep moving. So how does civilization survive without agriculture? In this alternate human history, the great agricultural revolution never happens. In our world, the domestication of plants and animals around 10,000 years ago marked a seismic shift. Suddenly, humanity could grow its own food, store it, and stay in one place. But in a world where permanent dwellings never emerged, this revolution stalls before it ever begins. Without the psychological or social inclination to settle down, early humans see farming not as an opportunity, but as a trap. Why would you plant crops you'd need to return 2 months later when your way of life thrives on motion? Farming ties you to the land, but this society ties its identity to the journey. In this world, mobility isn't a challenge to overcome. It's a sacred principle. Instead of agriculture, advanced foraging becomes the backbone of civilization. People evolve to become master trackers, botanists, and ecosystem readers. Tribes pass down complex knowledge about migratory animals, seasonal fruits, underground root networks, and insect colonies. Every member of a nomadic group is an environmental generalist, able to identify edible plants, hunt with minimal tools, and navigate shifting climates. Intelligence isn't measured by writing or arithmetic, but by one's ability to read the land like a living map. Over generations, human biology might subtly shift as well. Lighter digestive loads, increased physical endurance, a sharper sense of direction. Technology develops too, not around tractors or irrigation systems, but collapsible tools, biodegradable cooking kits, and lightweight traps. And because food can't be stored for long, there's little room for hoarding. Wealth doesn't accumulate in vaults or granaries, it flows with the people. This changes the very shape of society. Instead of rigid hierarchies formed around land ownership or resource control, communities maintain flatter power structures. Leadership rotates. Respect is earned through wisdom, storytelling, or survival skill, not by controlling territory or food supplies. Trade still exists, but it doesn't revolve around static markets or permanent roads. Picture a world of endless caravan routes and rendezvous points, constantly shifting yet surprisingly reliable. Tribes might specialize in unique tools or rare medicinal plants from their regions, bringing them to nomadic trade festivals held at sacred meeting grounds that reappear with the seasons. And here's something fascinating. Without agriculture to anchor them, humans avoid many of the problems that came with settled life. There are fewer pandemics, as disease has a harder time spreading among moving populations. Fewer class divides, since surplus is rare. Less environmental destruction, because the land is never overworked. Nomadic societies learn to live with the land, not dominate it. That's not to say life is easy. Constant motion means constant labor. Children grow up learning to walk for miles. Elders are revered but must keep pace. There are no walled towns to protect against storms or predators, but the trade-off is freedom, absolute and ever-present. And so, generation after generation, humans learn to survive, not by controlling nature, but by flowing with it. But if there are no farms, no houses, and no property, what replaces the idea of home? Let's redefine what home means when you're always on the move. In a world where humanity never settles, the idea of home undergoes a complete metamorphosis. Home isn't a place. It's a rhythm, a memory in motion, a familiar path underfoot. In this alternate timeline, humans never attach identity to a fixed structure. There are no childhood bedrooms, no street addresses, no white picket fences. Instead, home becomes synonymous with movement, routine, and community. Shelter is something you carry, not something you build. Think ultralight modular tents made of durable organic fibers, evolved from animal hides to synthetic leaf-based fabrics harvested on the move. Every shelter collapses, rolls, and straps to the body like a backpack. Assembly is a social activity, passed down like a ritual. Within minutes, an entire tribe can raise a mobile village, rest for a night, and vanish before dawn. And within these shelters, personal possessions are few. With no place to store them long-term, belongings are chosen with care and practicality. Family heirlooms aren't large or ornamental. They're wearable necklaces woven from ancestral materials, bracelets encoded with symbolic knots. The concept of a home full of stuff doesn't exist. Instead, memory lives in mobility. The tools you use daily, the routes you walk every year, the people you share each sunrise with. This nomadic humanity develops strong spatial memory. Entire migratory paths are etched into the collective consciousness. Instead of cities, they have roots. These aren't just trails through the wild, they're sacred veins of identity. Some paths are followed seasonally, tied to blooming cycles or animal migrations. Others mark historical journeys of legendary leaders or spiritual founders. To leave your route is to lose a part of yourself. In place of fixed property, there are zones of passage, commonly understood areas that tribes rotate through without ownership. While temporary territorial customs might exist, they're respected rather than enforced. There's no deed or fence, just a handshake, a shared meal, or a gifted song in exchange for safe passage through sacred terrain. The role of place shifts dramatically. Some sites, like majestic canyons, lush valleys, or ancient stone formations, become communal landmarks, destinations for seasonal gatherings, spiritual ceremonies, and storytelling. These are the few consistent locations known to all, not as homes, but as anchors in a world of motion. And identity itself becomes less rooted in place and more in motion. People define themselves not by where they live, but how they move. Tribes might be recognized by their travel patterns, their signature camps, or even the melodies of their movement. Music and chants that accompany them on the road, passed down across generations. Without fixed homes, the emotional weight of home is carried differently. It's found in the campfire laughter, the shared stories under the stars, the familiar footsteps beside your own. Attachment isn't to structures, but to people and patterns. Home becomes an experience, a fluid, living state of belonging. And what's most profound is how this affects relationships. Families aren't separated by property lines or distant cities. Communities stay close, literally walking the same path through life. Social cohesion is tight-knit. Isolation as we know it is rare. Children grow up knowing that the world itself is their home. They fall asleep under different skies, in new landscapes, surrounded by the sounds of nature instead of walls. This creates a humanity deeply bonded with the earth, not as owners, but as stewards and travelers. But if homes never existed, what about institutions, like schools, governments, or even culture? How do you build civilization when nothing is ever stationary? In a world without permanence, even the very pillars of society, education, governance, culture, must learn to walk. Without buildings, blackboards, or classrooms, education is no longer a place you go. It's a way of life. Learning happens everywhere, all the time. Children don't sit at desks. They walk beside elders, listening, observing, imitating. They learn by doing, gathering food, tracking animals, assembling shelters, navigating terrain, reading the stars. Every step of a journey becomes a lesson, and every elder is a walking textbook. Oral tradition becomes the dominant form of knowledge transfer. In our world, written language was preserved on stone, papyrus, or digital drives. Here, information is woven into song, chanted through poems, encoded in dance. Memory is externalized, not in bookshelves, but in bodies and breath. Families might carry histories in multi-generational chants that shift ever so slightly with each retelling, adding fluidity to even facts. Language itself becomes flexible, resilient, and deeply poetic. And without a fixed school system, there are no standardized curriculums. Each tribe may carry unique knowledge. One might specialize in desert survival, another in mountain navigation, another in river foraging. Learning from other tribes becomes a coveted cultural exchange, sparking friendly intergroup migrations just for the sake of shared learning. Governance, too, must be mobile. There are no palaces, no bureaucratic buildings, no city halls. Leadership is woven into the social fabric. Elders or chiefs are chosen not by bloodline or wealth, but by skill, memory, and diplomacy. Councils move with their people, holding meetings under trees, near rivers, or during evening stops. Without borders or centralized governments, power structures are decentralized, highly adaptive, and accountable. If a leader loses the trust of the group, there's no seat of power to cling to. The tribe simply stops listening. This creates an inherently responsive form of governance. Leaders must constantly earn their role by proving their wisdom in action, not theory. Law in this world is oral, based on shared tradition, consensus, and mediation. There's no written penal code. Justice is served through storytelling, dialogue, restitution, and exile when necessary. With no prisons, punishment must be swift, symbolic, and integrated into communal ethics. A wrongdoer might be tasked with a year of service to an elder, or required to travel alone for a season, a painful break from the collective path. Religion also transforms. Fixed temples and cathedrals are replaced by sacred places and cyclical rituals. A majestic waterfall, a silent grove, a windswept canyon. These become holy sites. Pilgrimages become the spiritual heart of belief, connecting people through movement rather than stillness. Deities are often tied to elements of the journey: the sky, the river, the wind, always with you, never locked in stone. Culture thrives in fluidity. Music isn't something you sit and watch. It's made on the move, sung in rhythm with footsteps. Clapped during breaks, danced at the fireside. Instruments are light, often handcrafted at each new location. Art is temporary, painted with dyes on skin, carved into sticks left behind, or composed of sand mandalas, erased by the wind. Clothing becomes a major cultural identifier. With no architecture to represent tribe identity, attire becomes symbolic. Colors, patterns, and stitching styles encode lineage, history, and beliefs. You wear your heritage on your body, literally. And despite the lack of infrastructure, ideas still spread. Tribes that cross paths exchange more than food. They swap philosophies, rituals, innovations. In time, a global oral network emerges. A traveling tribe might carry songs from thousands of kilometers away, blending distant myths and ideas into their own. Cultures evolve like rivers, always shifting, never still. In this world, permanence is not a strength, adaptability is. Institutions become as flexible and organic as the people they serve. They don't need buildings because they live in hearts, stories, traditions, and movement. But adaptability doesn't mean stagnation. In fact, this society finds ways to push technology forward, even without ever stopping to build. Even without permanent settlements, humanity's instinct to innovate remains unshaken. In fact, in this constantly mobile world, technology evolves not to anchor society, but to unburden it. Everything must serve the journey. From early on, tools are designed to be portable, modular, and multifunctional. A simple wooden staff might function as a walking aid, spear, cooking skewer, and tent pole. Nothing exists that performs only one task. Redundancy is a luxury this world cannot afford. As metalworking evolves, the materials used for tools become lighter and more durable. Nomadic blacksmiths use collapsible forges heated by solar reflectors or compact charcoal kilns. Metallurgy becomes a mobile trade. Tools, weapons, and cooking instruments are forged, sharpened, and traded on the move. Precious materials like obsidian, copper, and iron circulate not through mines and cities, but along vast, shifting barter routes that span continents. Energy, too, is unshackled from the grid. In a world with no cities or power plants, energy must be drawn directly from nature and carried with you. Solar panels evolve into ultralight solar fabrics, woven into clothing or shelters. Kinetic chargers turn walking itself into electricity. Tribes wear biomechanical gear that captures motion, body heat, and friction to power communication tools or portable lights. Communication technology has its own evolution. With no towers or satellites, humans develop low-bandwidth, long-range devices akin to evolved shortwave radios. Decentralized, flexible, and encrypted. Language, being oral and diverse, drives the creation of translation tools worn as earpieces or embedded in necklaces. These primitive but brilliant devices allow distant cultures to converse across dialects without needing centralized data systems. Even medicine adapts to the road. Instead of hospitals, each tribe trains specialized healers who carry mobile clinics on their backs. Fold-out gurneys, compact diagnostics, herbal distillation kits. Medicine is extracted fresh from the land as they travel. Birch bark, fungal tinctures, river clay, insect-based proteins. Knowledge of natural cures is preserved through oral pharmacology. Each plant and cure encoded in rhyme or ritual. Architecture, in the traditional sense, never arises, but human creativity with shelter does. Tent systems become advanced and artistic. Made from weather-adaptive membranes, these shelters adjust to heat, cold, and precipitation, expanding and contracting like living organisms. Some are grown from bioengineered plant fibers that self-heal or biodegrade when discarded. Transportation evolves without roads. Roads imply permanence, something to build and maintain. But in this world, travel is personal and self-directed. Think of modular caravan units, lightweight all-terrain pods pulled by beasts or humans themselves. Later, as technology develops, walking becomes assisted. Exoskeletons powered by movement help tribes travel longer distances without fatigue. The idea of vehicles is reimagined as walking machines, powered by solar and kinetic energy. They move at a steady pace, carrying entire communities like moving villages. When rivers are involved, tribes create modular rafts and floating platforms that latch together like aquatic puzzle pieces. They drift downstream in flotilla formations, families living and fishing on the water until the next landward trek. Some tribes might even become oceanic nomads, developing wind-assisted sails and storm-adaptive hulls for long-term maritime living. Even waste management is elegantly handled. Portable composting systems break down human waste into safe, usable material. Nothing is discarded unless it biodegrades. Tools are designed to be repaired endlessly. Every tribe has a maker, a fixer, a tinker sage who knows how to take apart and reassemble the very systems the community relies on. Despite this, there's no industrial revolution as we know it. Instead of factories, there are mobile innovation hubs, like roving guilds of inventors, healers, translators, and tech keepers. They travel from group to group, updating tools, sharing discoveries, and learning new ideas in return. Progress is slow, organic, and wildly decentralized, but it never stops. Despite this, there's no industrial revolution as we know it. Instead of factories, there are mobile innovation hubs, like roving guilds of inventors, healers, translators, and tech keepers. They travel from group to group, updating tools, sharing discoveries, and learning new ideas in return. Progress is slow, organic, and wildly decentralized, but it never stops. But no matter how advanced their tools, a world in constant motion still collides, especially when different tribes cross paths. So what happens to conflict, power, and the idea of borders in a stateless world? In a world with no permanent homes, what becomes of territory? What happens to the idea of nations, of control, of borders? The answer is as fluid as the people themselves. Without fixed settlements, there are no cities to defend, no walls to build, and no land to conquer in the traditional sense. Power isn't derived from territory. It's earned through influence, wisdom, or mobility. A leader is not someone who owns land, but someone who knows the roots best, negotiates peace effectively, or carries the stories of generations. Territory exists, but it's cyclical and temporal. Roots are understood collectively, passed through seasonally, and rarely claimed as exclusive. A river bend might be used by one tribe in spring, another in autumn. Migrations are staggered not just by necessity, but by tradition. Sacred geography becomes a kind of social contract, unwritten but deeply respected. Yet human nature doesn't vanish. Conflict still exists, but it looks different. Without borders or national armies, wars of conquest are impractical. You can't conquer what doesn't stay put. There are no fortresses to besiege, no capitals to topple. And without centralized government, no grand empires rise or fall. Instead, disputes arise over access to migratory paths, to rare resources, or to critical seasonal waypoints. Imagine two tribes converging at the same freshwater spring during a drought season. Tensions spike, negotiations spark, and if diplomacy fails, conflict erupts. But even then, it's limited. Violence is seen as wasteful in a society that can't afford long-term feuds. Every able body is needed for survival, and the cost of injury or death is too high for prolonged warfare. What emerges instead is a rich tapestry of diplomacy, ritual, and intertribal law. Before a clash, it's common for neutral mediators to intervene. Traveling arbitrators who specialize in resolving disputes through storytelling, offerings, or mutual trials. Whole systems of ceremonial combat evolve, allowing rival groups to resolve tensions through controlled contests, trials of skill, endurance, or knowledge. Winners claim rights to use routes or resources for a set season until the cycle renews. And because no group is isolated, ideas of justice and cooperation are constantly shared. Over time, intertribal federations form, not static nations, but seasonal alliances. These groups coordinate migration, timing, exchange knowledge, and settle disputes without ever establishing capitals or courts. They're fluid, evolving entities. With councils that meet during great convergences at sacred sites, natural amphitheaters, ancient stone rings, or mountaintop plateaus known to all. Without nationalism or borders, identity is based on lineage, movement style, or ancestral roots. Flags are replaced by emblematic patterns woven into cloaks, chanted clan songs, or ceremonial walking sticks etched with symbolic markings. Pride doesn't come from land ownership, it comes from journey mastery. From surviving the harshest paths, from honoring the migratory stories of your ancestors. Interestingly, crime exists, but in vastly different forms. There's no theft of land or property in the traditional sense, but betrayal of trust carries heavy weight. A guide who lies about a safe passage, a traitor who poisons supplies, or a leader who takes more than their share of communal resources risks being exiled. The ultimate punishment in a society built on collective movement. Exile means not just physical separation, but cultural erasure. Without a tribe, one loses not only protection, but identity. As generations pass, a kind of global etiquette emerges, an unspoken, shared culture of cooperation among the constantly moving. It becomes known when to offer aid, how to signal peaceful intent, or what gifts are customary when entering another tribe's path. Conflict becomes less about domination and more about negotiation. A survival instinct honed, not through conquest, but through compromise. And what about geopolitics? With no governments, no countries, and no borders, there are no world wars, no imperial expansions, no colonial enterprises. There's no global order to control, only a global rhythm to follow. It's a world where humanity lives, not on maps, but in cycles, and where power lies not in walls, but in wisdom. Still, there's a lingering question. If cities never existed, what did humans create in their place? How do culture, innovation, and community flourish when nothing is permanent? In our reality, cities became humanity's beating heart. They offered density, infrastructure, innovation, and identity. But in a nomadic world without permanence, cities never rise. Skyscrapers are never built. Roads never carve up the land. No New York, no Tokyo, no ancient Rome. And yet, the human need to gather, exchange, and celebrate doesn't vanish. It adapts. Instead of fixed cities, this world gives rise to migratory urbanism, massive. Coordinated gatherings that pulse across the land like living cities that breathe, collapse, and reform with the seasons. Imagine this. Once a year, thousands of nomadic tribes converge on a vast open plain in midsummer. Tents blossom across the fields like wildflowers. Stalls emerge. Food is traded, knowledge exchanged, songs shared, rituals performed. For 2 weeks, this becomes a city, alive with the noise of humanity. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, it vanishes, leaving no trace. These transient cities are synchronized with the migratory calendar, aligned with weather cycles, celestial patterns, or the bloom of key ecosystems. Each site is chosen for its temporary capacity to host thousands: a wide valley, a lakeside basin, a sun-drenched plateau. Some tribes specialize in organizing these grand convergences, acting as stewards of space and time. These aren't primitive gatherings, they are vibrant cultural epicenters. Philosophers meet under starlight to debate the nature of existence. Innovators demonstrate the latest collapsible cooking flame or foldable windmill. Dancers teach new styles borrowed from distant regions. Children are introduced to new languages, new games, new ways of seeing the world. Each of these nomadic metropolises functions like a cultural reboot. New ideas are introduced and redistributed. Relationships are forged between far-flung clans. Conflicts are negotiated and resolved. These meetings also act as vital information nodes where maps are updated, weather anomalies shared, rare sightings recorded, and migration timing adjusted across regions. And because no permanent infrastructure exists, architecture becomes an art of temporary wonder. Tent cathedrals are raised, massive structures made from silk-like membranes stretched high with bamboo and bone. Pathways are drawn in dyed sand, soon to be erased by wind. At night, the whole gathering glows with bioluminescent fabrics and firelight. A glowing galaxy of civilization beneath the stars, existing for just days before dissolving into the wilderness. Rather than growing upward, these transient urban centers grow outward, like petals unfolding, and then fading back into the earth. There's a spiritual reverence in the impermanence. To build something beautiful, only to take it down is not seen as wasteful, but as an expression of humility and freedom. Nothing traps you, nothing binds you. And in that transience lies meaning. Trade is a massive component of these gatherings. Specialized nomadic clans act as merchants, traveling for months with goods. Minerals, dyes, tools, spices, all packed into modular sleds or beasts of burden. Some items are purely symbolic, carved stones representing treaties, or bundles of scented herbs tied with dyed string to mark a marriage alliance. And while these urban nodes are short-lived, their memory is eternal. Tribes pass down stories of what happened at the gathering of the southern winds or the festival of the 5 rivers. These events become history books, written in story, song, and scar. In a sense, the world itself becomes one vast, decentralized city. A global mesh of moving people, pulsing hubs, and sacred roots. The idea of urban evolves not as a place, but as a moment. It's a celebration of collective human experience untethered to geography. And just like modern cities, these gatherings spark subcultures. Some tribes attend all major nodes, effectively becoming urban nomads, always chasing the next convergence. Others avoid them, living in near isolation for years before rejoining. This social stratification exists, but it's based on movement and gathering patterns, not class or real estate. Most profound of all, in the absence of cities, no human ever experiences the alienation of urban loneliness. You may never know skyscrapers, but you always walk with your tribe. You always gather under the stars with others. In this world, the density of connection replaces the density of buildings. And that connection transforms more than just trade or tradition, in a society with no roots in soil or stone. What happens to legacy, to art, to the very culture that binds generations together? What defines a culture when nothing lasts? In our world, legacies are built in stone: monuments, skyscrapers, libraries, and tombs. But in this world, where no building ever stands longer than a season, culture finds expression in motion, in transformation, and in the refusal to cling to permanence. This nomadic humanity embraces impermanence as identity. Life isn't about building to last. It's about creating beauty in the moment. Art, memory, ritual, all are designed to be experienced, not preserved. Paintings aren't framed. They're made in sand and wind. Performances are never recorded. They're passed through breath and rhythm. Architecture isn't a legacy, it's a process. Tents and shelters become canvases for generational expression, dyed with symbolic patterns, adorned with bones or beads that tell a family's migration history. In this world, legacy is not what you leave behind, it's what you pass on. Every story told around the fire, every song sung during a storm, every piece of wisdom whispered to a child becomes the foundation of continuity. Knowledge isn't stored in archives, but embodied in people. When an elder dies, the community doesn't mourn the loss of their possessions. They mourn the loss of a library, a living archive of memories. Because no one owns land or walls, identity is shaped by how you move, how you adapt, how you respond to the unpredictable. Flexibility becomes the highest form of intelligence. Pride is not in what you build, but how quickly you can take it down and carry it forward. Even relationships change. With no inheritance or property to transfer, marriage becomes a partnership in travel. Ceremonies are intimate, often celebrated during significant migrations or reunions. Love is measured not by shared space, but by shared direction. To walk beside someone for years is the ultimate commitment. Cultural rituals evolve around cyclical change. Entire festivals are dedicated to letting go, symbolic burning of worn tools. Dance rituals to honor the closing of a route, or group fasts, marking the start of a new migration cycle. Children grow up learning that nothing is supposed to last. And in that truth, they find power, freedom from the fear of loss, freedom from the burden of permanence. Even death reflects this worldview. There are no cemeteries. The dead are returned to the land, buried in places chosen for spiritual significance during that particular cycle. Sometimes the body is not buried at all, but offered to the natural elements, sky, sea, or soil, to be recycled. Gravestones aren't needed. The stories of the departed are carried in chants and symbols that remain forever in motion. But this world is not void of emotion. In fact, it's deeply emotional, because everything is temporary. Every moment feels heightened. When a migration path crosses a valley remembered from childhood, the reunion with the landscape is spiritual. When a story is told that hasn't been spoken in decades, it feels like resurrection. And technology doesn't replace tradition, it enhances it. Portable digital devices or their analog equivalents in a less advanced timeline are designed to record, share, then delete. Music may be uploaded and played from solar devices, but is deleted before the next cycle to keep stories fresh and sacred. Over time, the world itself becomes humanity's canvas. Trails marked with biodegradable dyes, trees wrapped in ceremonial thread, stones etched with temporary glyphs. Nothing stays, yet everything matters. And what results is a global culture of fluid identity, where to be human means to flow with change, to celebrate movement, and to honor impermanence not as loss, but as the natural state of existence. Where other civilizations built pyramids and empires to defy time, this one thrives by accepting it. So what does this all add up to? In a world where nothing is permanent, are we more human or less? What does it truly mean to live untethered? What would the world look like if we never stopped moving? No cities, no homes, no buildings meant to outlast the people who built them. And yet, humanity doesn't collapse. It transforms. We trade permanence for presence, property for memory, architecture for adaptability. And in doing so, we find a different kind of civilization, one that flows like water, evolves like wind, and lives not in stone, but in song. This world lacks monuments, but it has legacy. Not in metal plaques or marble statues, but in the way stories are carried, tools are passed down, and footsteps echo across sacred paths. There are no nations, no skyscrapers, no borders to die over. But there is connection, deeper, more personal, more immediate than what modern infrastructure can ever promise. There is knowledge, passed not in books, but in breath. There is culture, expressed not in museums, but in the daily dance of survival and sharing. In this timeline, humans never chose to settle, and yet they still built a world. Just not one made of walls. So, here's the question. Would we be more free in a world with no anchors? Or would we miss the comfort of roots, even if they chained us to the ground? If this nomadic world fascinated you, imagine living in it. What would you carry if you could never settle? What would home mean to you? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more journeys through bizarre, mind-bending alternate realities, subscribe to the channel, like the video to keep it moving through the algorithm, and share it with someone who's never really felt at home in one place. Because in this universe, the story never stops, and neither do we.